Imagine a soccer league where anybody can beat anybody on any given week. Imagine a league where one year a team can finish 20th in the league and the next year jump up to 4th. Possibly a league where a team can finish 15th one year and win the league the next year. Maybe your team won the league last year, but they finished 12th this year. Is this league potentially possible? Would this be the most exciting soccer to watch in the entire world? This dream league of pure chaos does actually exist, and I'm going to show you where in the world it is right now. So here we go. The MLS is the most chaotic league in the world. Absolutely anybody can finish anywhere at any time. And what I've done today is put together a little spreadsheet so that you guys can see the finishing of the different teams in each season. So Toronto finished first. This is all regular season standings. Toronto finished first in 2017. Second was New York City, and so on and so forth. Teams that have NA were not in the league yet. They're expansion teams a little bit later on. And what I did was go through and highlight the biggest jumps and the biggest drops so that you guys can see exactly how crazy this league is. So, first of all, a team like Sporting Kansas City. They came third in 2018, and then they dropped all the way to 21st in 2019, and then they came third again in 2020. Absolutely insane. We have a team like New England, an average team for 4 years, and going back even further, they were even worse than that. And they end up coming first in 2021. And we have a team like Columbus Crew who goes 5, 10, 20, 4, and then 17. So they went 20 to 4 to 17. This is stuff that you don't see in other soccer leagues. Other leagues are fairly predictable, and I'm going to show you the correlations of everything over on the next page. But this is just to get an idea of how absolutely insane this is. The darker the color, the crazier the finish was. Red is obviously a drop. Green is going up. So you can see there are some teams that are pretty consistent. Seattle, New York, Portland. Philadelphia is getting into that consistent range. Atlanta has been very consistent outside of a disaster of a 2020 year. But then there are other teams that are consistently bad. Montreal Impact is typically pretty bad. Houston Dynamo has been really, really bad. San Jose Earthquakes have been really, really bad. So there is some correlation from one season to the next. There are some franchises that are just run well, and there are some that are just run poorly, but any team can win the league at any given time. I am going to show you over here. This chart absolutely astounded me. Before we get into the correlations, consider supporting me on Patreon. Everything that I raise helps me to improve the quality of the channel. Now back to the correlation. So we have the average finish top 5. So this means that for the teams that finished top 5 in 2017, so that's Toronto, Columbus, Atlanta, New York, and Chicago. They average finished 9.4 the next season. The teams that finished 6th to 10th were 7.6. So it was actually better to finish 6 to 10 for the next season than it was to finish in the top 5, which is kind of a weird thing to think about. Generally, you think like a Premier League team, like the top 5 teams, and the Premier League top 6, but generally the top 5 teams are going to mostly stay the same. Here, the 6 through 10 teams were actually better than the top 5, and you can see that trend continued in 3 of the 4 years that we measured. This is saying the 2017 compared to the next season, 2018. This is 18 compared to 19, 19 compared to 20, and 20 compared to 21. The overall average for these 4 was 9.1. So on average, a team that finished in the top 5 would finish in 9th place, whereas a team that finished 6 to 10 would finish in 8th place. So the teams finishing 6 to 10 are actually a little bit better off going into the next season traditionally. And you can see there is a little bit of a drop after top 10. So they average 13 and they average 15. But even the teams from 11 to 20 are all right in the same neighborhood. Now this is the part that really, really astounded me. Is the correlation. So for you guys that don't know, a correlation is between -1 and 1, and it shows you basically the relationship between two sets of numbers. Essentially what it's telling us, 0 would mean it's just completely random. There's absolutely no predicting the future from what's come from the past. And these numbers are super, super low, especially 151 is almost getting to that spot of being just completely random. Some of these are a little bit higher. So like 19 to 20, obviously you had the pandemic, which is why this is a little bit lower than maybe the other ones could be. But even as a whole, on average, these numbers are absolutely insanely low for being soccer standings. I went ahead and did the Eredivisie, Bundesliga, and Premier League the same way. I picked 17 to 18 season as compared to the 18 to 19 season, everything pre-pandemic, and you can see the Eredivisie had a 0.82, so a very strong correlation. So the teams that finished top in 17-18 were fairly likely to finish top in 18-19. And even in a crazy Bundesliga season that had Schalke go from second to like 15th, the Bundesliga still came out with a 0.542. So they were still pretty well correlated, especially when compared to these. All 4 seasons were lower than the craziest Bundesliga season swing of that I could find. And then we have the Premier League, who many people consider to be the most competitive league in the world. Anybody can beat anybody on any given day. The toughest league in the world. It has a 0.862 correlation from 17-18 to 18-19. So it was fairly easy to predict who was going to finish top 6 based on the 17-18 standing. So just something to kind of think about here when you guys are trying to set up teams for next year and you're looking back and you're saying, well, New England was an absolute stud of a team last year. They're probably going to be an absolute stud of a team this year. Well, actually, New England hasn't been very good traditionally. They did have a great year, but you can see what happened to LAFC. They finished 12th after winning the league. Atlanta finished 3rd. So it's definitely possible to finish very highly after winning the league, but it's not necessarily a guarantee. Toronto came from 1 to 19. Toronto is insane. They're either one of the best teams in the league or one of the worst. You guys that are looking for Revolution players, you guys that are looking for Colorado Rapids players, just know that these things do happen. They happen a lot. MLS teams will have a really good season and then drop down. Conversely, teams will have a really bad season and then come roaring back up. So maybe a time to buy Toronto FC players, especially with all the guys that they added, with the new coach that they have, with the guys that they're going to be picking up over the summer. Maybe Toronto is a team that could bounce back heavily. Columbus Crew looks like a team that could definitely bounce back. Although, I mean, I don't really see a whole lot of talent coming in there, but Columbus Crew tends to be a pretty decent run organization. 3 top 10 finishes in the last 5 years. So just something to think about when you guys, from a European perspective, you're used to Ajax being Ajax and always winning the Dutch league, or maybe it's like Ajax, PSV, and maybe one other team. Anybody can win the MLS this year. Anybody. I mean, I would be not surprised if anyone outside of maybe Miami, Austin, and Houston won the league. Maybe San Jose would be a little bit surprising, and Chicago would be surprising. But I mean, I could see Cincinnati, I could see Impact, I could see DC, I could see LA, and any of these teams up further all have the talent to win this league this year. So just something to keep in mind. Don't just buy players that are high priced because they did well last year. MLS is a very, very volatile league. Don't be afraid to buy low on players that had bad years, that had down years, because a lot of times they will bounce back. That's going to be it for the video today. Appreciate you guys watching. Hop over to the Patreon page for some inside information. Until the next time, Vamos United.